This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
Our business, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. and Fridays, 6 to 7 p.m. on Power 98.7.
6:49 is the time, and this evening we launched the POWERSolutions campaign as in association with Power 98.7 and Ntiyiso Consulting. Now, the company is no stranger here on Power 98.7, and this campaign seeks to offer solutions to challenges faced by businesses, wide-ranging, but we're going to get into all the nitty-gritties there. Head of Revenue at Ntiyiso Consulting, Mhlanganisi Madlongolwana, joins us in studio for this conversation. Good evening.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you so much. It's a better day.
Is it?
It is.
I'm glad. Just in terms of the name, you mean Mhlanganisi.
Mhlanganisi.
Yes.
Yabonage. This Ntswana girl is going to get there. Let's unpack the overview, though, of this campaign because, like I indicated, business solutions are critical in terms of the current times that we find ourselves in, wide-ranging in their nature. So what is it that is sought with this campaign?
Look, I think, of course, the impact of COVID is something that's topical. I think every single day we're having conversations about businesses closing down, businesses being unable to access TERS funding, organizations collapsing, organizations having to restructure and rethink about what their future looks like or whether they do have a future in the first place, actually. And when we thought about it, we said, you know what, there's a lot of businesses that would actually benefit from getting consultants, seasoned consultants, to sit in and help them think through their challenges. Something interactive, something valuable, but also more importantly, consulting skill is not something that you can easily access, of course, because of the cost and the premium that it comes at, right? So we do think that from a social mandate point of view, this campaign allows us to actually interact with organizations. We then thought a little bit, Dumisang, about this and said, outside of businesses, let's think about organizations as a whole, right? Because ultimately, and this is something that we speak about, and it's our organizational ethos at Ntiyiso Consulting, we're always keen to empower the institutions that enable Africa's development. And those institutions vary. They don't necessarily have to be profit-making businesses, but they can also be social mandate implementers, you know. So if you're looking at, for instance, your SASAs as an organization, which has been topical and has had challenges that have been in the public eye, you know, we sat down and problem solved around those issues, and we said, look, if we were to go into an organization like that, the first thing we need to think about is process. How do you think about process, verification of beneficiaries, but also the most efficient way to get benefit to these individuals? So we think about that quite a lot. We do a lot of market intelligence. We do a lot of predictive analysis around the issues that organizations will face across the board. And we said, okay, you know what? Now that we've introduced the brand to clients, now that we've introduced the brand to Power listeners and to the rest of the region, let's actually come in and show what it is that we can do as an organization. Show how we think about problems, client problems, but also more importantly, the first principle approach, where we actually sit down with a very specific challenge where we don't cookie cut around these issues. And we thought, let's bring the campaign forth.
Extremely encouraging. We've just spoken to the group CEO at Standard Bank. They themselves, as a big bank, are facing challenges. And I'm, even more encouraged that you mentioned the likes of problem solving at SASA, for instance, and the necessary, what necessitates a solution and a problem solving type of approach for businesses currently in South Africa is also going to speak to what the new normal is going to mean for a business going forward. So at this point in crisis time, how critical does this element then become for a business?
Look, I think, of course, and we joke about it, but you almost have to be psychic about it. I use the language. Hey, you must be sangomik, you know. We do think that any business leader who is worth their salt thinks about their business 5, 10, if not a year ahead of where they actually are right now. We did the same thing for ourselves as a business, and we said, hey, we're going into a second year of a pandemic. We're going to have to think about the business. How do we streamline our own operation? How do we ensure that our operation works and actually use the principle that we have with us? We are very happy to get in touch with the Group CEO of Standard Bank. Definitely.
It's about time.
Definitely to get in touch with the Group CEO of Standard Bank. We think we have the right professionals to actually help them think through their challenges.
Yeah.
But you see, the spectrum of which these challenges come through actually is quite is wide and varied, right? There's smaller businesses who are generating revenues, creating the jobs, but having to think about what their value proposition looks like going forward.
Yeah.
We want that kind of impact, but we also think that if you look at the institutions that service people and the institutions that have an impact on people, so your SOEs, if you look at the agencies and cities, if you look at municipalities, we're looking to speak to all of these institutions because these are institutions that we service. We've built a 16-year track record, and we believe that that track record is one that can benefit these organizations going forward.
You mentioned SOEs, municipalities. It's subject matters and businesses that Ntiyiso has interacted with and problem solved for. That experience then gives you even far greater of an advantage to problem solve in these tricky times. A test case of how exactly it is to deal with a company in crisis time then, especially a big corporate.
So over 16 years, by the way. So we believe that we've earned our stripes.
Yeah.
And more importantly, as an organization, when you're building traction in markets, when you're building space in markets, you're always wanting to first take a little bit of a back end, build the traction, build the trust. We always joke about it in the firm that actually sort of a business is built at the speed of trust.
Okay.
We've taken 16 years to actually to do that, and we believe that capacity puts us here. Now, when you look at a test case from a crisis point of view, one of key sort of issues that we will bring up, by the way, throughout the campaign as a case study is the issue of if you look at the TERS and the UIF issues.
Yeah.
So those were process issues, if you think about it. Interestingly enough, we problem solved for that in April of 2020. The crisis broke in December of 2020.
It was immediate.
Exactly. And we said, look, if you look at the UIF issue, if you look at the impact that's coming through, there are some key issues that we're going to have to think about. One, you're going to have to think about verifying beneficiaries to ensure that you don't actually have leakages, which, by the way, is a very key aspect of our work across organizations. We think about revenue leakages, but we also think about efficiencies in general.
All right.
The second thing is you're going to have to think about process. What is the process? How do you get people in? And you're going to do almost like a step-by-step exercise where you say, Tumisang comes in, she's a beneficiary. We need to verify. We need to ensure that she has the right bank account, but we need to put in the measures to ensure that she doesn't get paid out twice. All of the issues that actually popped up, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, for instance, we're confident as an organization to say, hey, we're thinking about these things. They quite literally happen a few months later. Why can't we come in, interact with organizations and interact with potential clients and interact with people that just need the help to think about these things, Dumisang? So that for us is an important aspect, and that's what we want to be able to do.
It's the turnaround that's going to be extremely important because no one at this point has time to waste even further. Participation then, let's highlight on who exactly can participate and the sort outcomes, especially when you talk about smaller organizations that are able to participate and are able to at least get some sort of assistance through this campaign. What exactly is the criteria?
Look, I think for us, the criteria, one, of course, is there must be an organization that has traction. So organizations that have built a traction over a 5-year period and above.
Okay.
Those are usually sustainable. Those are usually hiring people. They hire from about 20 to 100 people. From that point of view, from a business point of view. But we're also looking to widen the scope. And I think that's why we use the language so carefully around organizations and not necessarily just businesses. Because, and I want to take a bit of an off-ramp here. If you look at municipalities, for instance, as an institution, municipalities in their truest forms are actually businesses.
Oh, yeah.
So they need to be run like businesses. You need to manage the efficiencies. You need to manage the service delivery. You need to manage the payment thereof. So those are institutions that we're definitely looking to interact with. Those, of course, can be done through a test case and a case study to ensure that, when a leader of an institution doesn't feel comfortable, anonymize it, but send us the problems, because then we can work out on case studies, right? Importantly, also part of this campaign, Dumisang, and it's something that we're very passionate about. The first time we actually spoke to the station was to say we're very keen on creating knowledge. How do we ensure that we create knowledge, but also ensure that knowledge is housed? And this is the value of this exercise. So anyone who would have, for instance, heard about organizational design, which is a key capability of ours as a firm, and may not necessarily have caught a show, can now go onto a podcast on our website or the Power website and actually access that information, sit down, take down notes and implement, and get in touch with us to help them think about these. So that's what we're looking at. So we're looking at businesses across the board with a level of maturity from about 5 years, with a substantial track record, who can send in their challenges. We're looking at organizations that are substantial, your municipalities, your SOEs, your social mandate implementers. If you're looking, for instance, your entities and cities which are not necessarily part of the municipalities but are agencies of municipalities. All of these are thinking about these. If you look at, for instance, a very interesting example, which I think is a great one, is if you look at the fresh produce market and the concept of fresh produce markets across the different metros, those should be money spinners.
Of course.
And so those are actually the institutions that keep these cities alive, and we want to be able to interact with those challenges. We will, of course, also present some case studies that we've learned across the period. So we'll come through and say, this is actually a typical case study that we'll present and how we worked across it, so that we can also show that we've thought about these things, we've problem solved, but also we've done it before.
Absolutely exciting. I can't wait. Thank you so much for your input. Head of Revenue at Ntiyiso Consulting, Mhlanganisi Madlongolwana, speaking to us this evening on Power Business in the launch of the POWERSolutions campaign in association with Power 98.7 and Ntiyiso Consulting. If this speaks to you, do participate. We look forward to tracking how this process unfolds. It's news time.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.